Hello and welcome to Weekly Fix. I'm your host Zane, joined with always my co-host Jacob. We have an unique episode. We have some content that we're not going to be breaking down, but we are going to be talking about just a little bit. We have a question of the week that we're going to pose, and maybe some movie recommendations for a very special weekend coming up. But before we get into all of that, Jacob, how was your week?
It was good, man. We've talked about it a lot. We're kind of starting to get into a little bit of a lull as far as like stuff going on, but we have something exciting that we're going to be talking about that we finally picked up. And while I've only watched the first episode of it, it has been very good and very refreshing and very fun to watch. So I'm excited to talk about that here in a few minutes. But other than that, no, it's been fun. We got to hang out this past weekend a little bit as you made a little trip up here to West Virginia. So that was always nice to actually get to see you in person. And instead of having our comic talk and our entertainment talk on the podcast, we're able to actually sit down and talk face to face, which is always a lot more fun than doing it while looking at a blank computer screen. But nonetheless, it's been a pretty good week.
That's great. Yeah, and for me, it was a little bit of a roller coaster week. We got some news that obviously is going to make its way to the podcast pretty soon, but not quite ready to share that. Definitely going to make some changes and maybe put out some, I don't know, maybe inconsistencies with our release schedule, but that's all right. We know that with Jacob moving down and then this new thing, we may be a little bit inconsistent, but we'll be as consistent as we possibly can with those Tuesday drops. But hopping right into the content, me and Jacob both decided to go ahead and pick up X-Men 97, the animated series. Now, this is not a brand new series. In and of itself, it is completely and totally a pickup of the 90s cartoon X-Men, and it jumps right into it. There is no recap. There is no, hey, let's hold your hand and start over. It just hops right in. So without further ado, Jacob, you said you've been liking the series. What else? Like, what are you liking about it, and why exactly is it refreshing for you?
So it's only the first episode that I've been able to get through. But for me, which this might surprise a lot of people, we've talked about it a little bit in a podcast. I didn't watch a whole lot of movies growing up. I did not watch a whole lot of cartoons growing up. I actually never, ever watched any Marvel cartoons growing up. Not a single one. So this was literally my first time ever watching a Marvel cartoon. And it was really fun. It was really refreshing. We talked about it a little bit in person, that you had kind of started to go back to those original, like the 90s X-Men 97. And you had talked about how it just seemed a little too kiddish, which isn't bad. I like a lot of those things. I would say the Clone Wars, Star Wars, the Clone Wars has a lot of that in it. Some very, very kid-friendly episodes. But one thing that I felt was very refreshing about X-Men 97 is I think it was kid-friendly enough that, 9-year-old kids could really have fun and enjoy it. But it wasn't so kid-friendly that, me as an adult about to turn 25 next week, I could still really enjoy it and not feel like there was, pauses in between sentences like there can be with kids shows sometimes to give the kids a second to process and things like that. That's what I really appreciated about the show, was it felt very, I guess I'd use the word edible for all ages. I don't feel like it was really catered towards any one age group. I think it's just a good cartoon, and that was one thing that was really refreshing for me. And like I said, it being my first Marvel cartoon ever, it was really cool to kind of see what a lot of people grew up with and what a lot of people have come to love throughout their life.
Yeah, and you touched on it there just a little bit with maybe. So I did try to start the journey of the X-Men entire series because I do want to be caught up. I don't like being left out of a loop or not understanding something because there's more content out there that I haven't taken in yet. And that's one of the things I love about the MCU so much, is that I have, I've been a day one fan. So, I watched Iron Man when it came out. I never got to see any of those initial ones in theaters. I was a little bit too young, and we didn't go to theaters like that growing up. So, I've known all of the ins and outs of the MCU since it began. Somebody comes and asks me something, like I'm going to know the answer generally about it. So for this, it was, that was the desire. Like I wanted to be the same with this show. However, when I started watching it, I was like, man, if I'm going to get through this, like, I don't think my wife will be on board. And also, like, it's just like, it was a little painful. It was
Right.
fine, but like you said, like it was choppy. It didn't seem smooth. It didn't seem like a great flow, and you could definitely just tell like it was lower budget animation,
Yeah.
which is fine. And I'm sure it was a great show back in the day, but just currently with what I've been used to with a little bit higher quality animation for watching, I just was like, man, I just don't think it's worth my time at this stage in my life. So I actually just went and watched Screen Crush. I think Ryan Airy put out a Screen Crush 38-minute YouTube video of like, here's a recap of all 6 seasons of X-Men 97 or X-Men before you watch X-Men 97. And so I always enjoy those kind of recaps because it does allow you to kind of keep up with not being completely blindsided. Now, I definitely didn't watch that YouTube video with the most in like I guess my recorder on, so I definitely like did not capture all of that content. Yeah, I kind of just like listening while I did the dishes. So it wasn't like I grasped everything, but I think I got enough of the story. I don't feel completely lost. And also I was expecting like a, hey, this is where the X-Men have been, or like something. But dude, they don't do a single thing.
Not at all. So I'll actually have to. You might need to link me that video because that would be great for me to watch. Because like I said, a lot of this stuff is new to me. As far as like X-Men go, I really don't have a very big. Not sure the exact word to use, but I'm not super knowledgeable on the X-Men. You know, I've read some comics here and there. You know, I've obviously watched some of those Fox movies. But, you know, as far as like the core of what the X-Men are, which is a lot more what this show is, it's really kind of, you know, the beginning of a lot of the X-Men stories that we have. I don't know a whole lot of it. So that's one of the things that's been exciting is getting to learn that stuff a lot more. So I'd definitely be interested to watch that breakdown. Like you said, I think that would give a lot of good insight. But I think you can definitely agree with the fact that this show definitely feels more geared toward all audience rather than kids.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I know you've only seen the first episode, but as we get further down it, it's definitely something that I'm like, okay, like this is definitely like um I think it's Y, or oh no, it's TV 14.
Okay.
Which is like, so I was thinking it was Youth 7.
That's what I thought it was too.
But it's actually rated TV 14, and it's definitely TV 14 as you go through it. Like it's
okay, cool.
It's just a little bit, and I think it's just a scare. I think scare would be, or what is it? Frightening scenes probably keeps it from that TV 7, because it's definitely there. It gets into some pretty dark stuff. I know the X-Men have some really dark villains.
Yes,
and like they are one of the coolest parts of the Marvel universe that we really haven't got to be with at all. And even the episodes that, or even the movies that we've gotten of the X-Men don't really explore the X-Men team at its fullest capacity. You know, we touch on a lot that animation you can do a lot with. Like Jubilee would be an incredibly difficult character to do in live action because she's constantly making fireworks, or like, you know,
talk about a CGI budget you need for that one.
Yeah, like that's just insane. However, that's just another drawing on the page. Not saying it's easy. I never want to say that, you know, animation is easy. However, it like at one point it is still just drawing. So whether you're drawing something simple or you're drawing something complex, you know, it doesn't harbor the animation budget as much as it would if you were trying to take a shot and insert a digital image on top of it with CGI. Now that's also much more difficult to make it look real, because in CGI it doesn't have to look real. But I'm really enjoying this. It's definitely a breath of fresh air. The first episode was a little bit of, okay, I feel lost a little bit. I'm gonna have to catch my feet running, because I didn't expect to feel as lost as I did. I expected them to kind of baby me into it, but I'm glad they didn't, for all of those fans who wanted this season when it got canceled. That they didn't have to set through, okay, we're going to catch everyone up. Because like sometimes you can lose a lot of momentum by trying to catch people up, when, especially when the information is out there for people to find. Like if I really wanted to not feel lost, I would have just watched the show that it's played off of. And I think that's kind of like the same thing for sequels. Like people who are like, you have to watch the first one. Well, it's a freaking sequel. Like, of course you have to watch the first one. Like, it's Jurassic Park 2. Like, there's
Right.
definitely going to be some things from Jurassic Park 1. So I always hate that argument. So I definitely don't think it's a bad thing, but it was something that I was like, okay, this is unexpected, but now that I'm kind of in it a little bit farther because I've seen 4 episodes now, I'm definitely like, okay, like they made a good decision here.
Well, and that's one thing I guess I hadn't even thought about really was the fact, like you said, there isn't. I didn't notice when I watched the first episode there wasn't like a previously on X-Men '97. Um, so it's nice knowing that they're not going to spend a lot of time, honestly, waste time trying to explain to us when it is out there, which I really appreciate because I would rather just, give people the opportunity to watch it if they want to. It's there for you, but don't force them to. Which, with a lot of those flashbacks and trying to catch people up, that's what it does. It's just forcing you to watch something that's already out there. And I don't agree with that, kind of like you were saying. So I'm happy that they kind of did the same thing. Let's just let them catch up if they want to. But necessarily, I feel like I said, I've only watched 1 episode, but from what I watched of that 1 episode, I didn't feel lost at any point. I feel like it's really easing into it. Now, there might be some stuff I would have appreciated more if I was more familiar with the entire story, but after 1 episode, I felt like very capable of keeping up with what the story is and what it kind of has been, just with the little references that they did make.
Oh yeah, and I didn't feel lost from a story aspect, more of a like character aspect, I think. Um, but and I'm just not as familiar with X-Men. I haven't read. I think I've read like 3. Well, outside of Civil War, I've read a few X-Men comics, but not really much at all. So it's just characters I'm not familiar with. Honestly, my biggest familiarity with them is probably from X-Men, other than the main ones, the X-Men movies, but also Marvel Snap. Like,
Right.
so like like I didn't know who Jubilee was until I played that game, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And it seems weird with as big of a Marvel fan as I am, but I have never dove into X-Men as hard as I have because even Wolverine's in my top 3 characters of all time, but like most of the Wolverine comics that I've read are Wolverine comics. They're not
Yeah,
like
just him.
they're just him, or it's Wolverine versus the Hulk, or Wolverine in another story. So that's also, and the movies were centered around him. He even
Yeah,
the Deadpool trailer kind of
alludes to that.
yeah, alludes at it, like you were the X-Men, like he's the only one that really mattered in those movies, essentially, like he was the focus.
Yeah.
So my knowledge of the characters is really where I felt lost, not necessarily the story. I think the story is pretty clear.
Well, and that's one thing I've appreciated also about the show. Again, only 1 episode in, so everything I say is with a grain of salt because could all change very quickly. But I did feel like there was just a focus more so on the overall group of the X-Men rather than Wolverine, which was so cool to see because these other characters are so awesome. You touched on Jubilee. Obviously, I know who Cyclops is. You know who Jean Grey is. You know these characters, but you don't really know their story and what they're going through and like their all those things that really make a character special. And just after watching 1 episode, I really liked Cyclops. I thought he was a very cool character. I liked his tone and his whole demeanor about trying to figure out what to do, with Professor X not being there. I liked that whole aspect of it, and it was really cool to see it that way. So I'm definitely super excited to continue with this show just to learn more about the characters.
Yeah, and I think you're really gonna like it. It's sitting at a 9.0 on IMDb currently, and I know the whole season isn't out, so take that with a grain of salt. But 14,000 reviews so far, which
Yeah.
is low. I'm sure by the time that the show ends, they'll rank. I don't rate a series until the entire thing's out, which I'm also glad that we're gonna be able to catch up for the finale before it airs. There's still 3 episodes to be released.
Mm-hmm.
So that's super fun. That we'll be able to talk about the show in its entirety when the finale comes out. But I'm really glad we picked this up. It's one that I wasn't excited for when they announced that it was coming back because I hadn't watched the show. But I'm really enjoying it now, and it's really I think it's a needed win for Marvel, especially to win some of the fan base back. Now I Do you think this is going to be canonized in any upcoming movies pretty soon, or do you think they may wait for maybe a future X-Men film to kind of tie this one in, or do you think they'll tie it in at all?
I do think they'll tie it in, but I don't know the capacity at which they'll do that. I mean, the state of Marvel that we have currently, you can always do something kind of like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has done, where you kind of just show little glimpses of all these other Marvel universes that we know about. We see in the Across the Spider-Verse movie, you do see stuff like from the Spider-Man Marvel video games that are currently coming out. You see little snippets like that. I could definitely see them doing something in those regards where they're not really just giving a whole canonizing it, but letting you know that it is canon in its own world. Me personally, I would really like to see them canonize it in a certain way. I don't necessarily know that I want them to bring it to live action. I kind of like that this is a whole cartoon thing. I think that makes it a lot more fun, and it lets them have more leeway with the stuff they can do. So they can do some stuff in this cartoon, talk about it all the time. You can do stuff in cartoons you just can't do in live action. So I really think this is something that would be cool to continue that, so they don't have to try to figure out something with the Jubilee fireworks and then us have a sour taste in our mouth because of how bad it looks in live action. So I wouldn't mind if they just left it at that, but I could see them doing some little tie-ins, maybe references to some stuff that happens in this universe, in this cartoon. But overall, that's where I think they'll go with it. I don't see them making this like a big, fleshed out live action thing eventually. I really do think they'll keep it kind of focused on the cartoon, but also give you those little hints like, oh, in this universe, Cyclops did this, and we'll know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I kind of think now. I kind of think along the same lines as you, is like maybe not like a full canonization or like step it completely out of it, but maybe pull some characters out of the universe and put them in, and then kind of like put them back in the animation situation. However, some people think it's already canon, and they think that happened in the Marvels, with the way that the Beast looked, played by Kelsey Grammer.
That's true. Yeah,
he didn't look like himself from X-Men, 2000, early 2000 X-Men, where he played him. He looked more like the Beast that we're getting in this X-Men. Do you think that holds any water?
I mean, it's definitely a good theory, and I've heard lots of crazy things. I don't know if I mentioned it, but like I have heard a lot of theories about ways they are gonna canonize this. I've heard some crazy rumors out there that think in the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer that this is the Wolverine that somehow is pulled out of this universe. There's some people that think all the X-Men are going to die by the end of the season finale. I've heard so many crazy things. I think the Marvels one, I haven't heard that theory personally, but now that you mention it, I said, oh, that kind of does make sense. So I wouldn't be shocked if something like that were the case. But again, we live in such a world where theories go crazy. Sometimes I've tried to tell myself, because I used to be one of those people, I wanted the crazy nonsense stuff to happen, these crazy cameos. Sometimes it's best just for it to be as simple as possible, because that's the way you're going to get the best story. You don't have to figure out all these things that cause, loopholes and all that stuff. Sometimes it's best just to let it do what it needs to do in the simplest way. And I hope that's what they do with this one. Now, if they can find out a clever way to do it and not make it feel forced, which I feel like a lot of canonization and a lot of cameos and stuff can do, that's where you got to be a little careful. But I wouldn't mind the Marvels theory, because that does kind of have some weight to it. I think that might actually be kind of cool.
Yeah, I honestly don't prefer that they pull them in all the way. I'd rather them just kind of have them kind of on the side. Maybe people travel to their universe, but not necessarily the other way around until Secret Wars. If that's still the story that they want to tell. I mean, honestly, I have no clue what their path holds, if Kang Dynasty is happening, if they're pivoting to X-Men versus the Avengers, which I've heard that may be a storyline. So I think it really kind of depends on what story Kevin Feige really is kind of pivoting to, or staying true to. But I think a full canonization is definitely going to happen. I just don't know how it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it would be cool if they do it in the right way. It's just one of those things they got to be so careful with. But, just sticking with what we have now, I really think they have something special on their hands. I'm super excited to finish up the show. I'm super excited that we're getting into it at a really good time. Getting in here right before this season finale. I think this finale has a lot of hype built around it, just from the little bit of stuff I've been reading on places. People are super excited for it. I'm only an episode in, and I can already tell I'm going to be excited for it. So I think we definitely made the right choice by giving this a chance. And I'm kind of disappointed in ourselves that we didn't give it a chance sooner, with as big as Marvel fans and all that we are. It's a little sad that it took this long for us to finally give it a chance, but hey, at least we're finally here and we're enjoying it.
Yeah, I always knew I was gonna watch it. We just had a lot of drops, a lot of things going
Yeah.
on. So, especially with me trying to keep up with the Bad Batch, that's just like,
Oh,
you
come
know,
on. Don't throw him
there's
under the bus yet. We saved that for
yeah,
later.
it's just like I, I'm trying to watch so much, and then life is busy. Like life
Well,
is busy. So
and then you have stuff like Fallout that kind of really comes out of nowhere, and it's something that you kind of feel like you have to binge because it is good. I know you weren't as high on it as I was, but you were at least invested in it enough to want to finish the story. So when you have stuff like that popping up, and like you said, life is busy, it can be hard, especially when I hate to say it, it is a smaller part of the Marvel universe right now.
that's right.
But it could really become something big. So at least we're getting in on it now. But yeah, it's fun, and I'm super excited to continue with it.
And plus, the NBA playoffs are going on, so
Oh,
that's eating some time. Uh, but
right.
uh, but we touched on it just there, trying to keep up with the Bad Batch. Which actually, as of filming this episode, we are a day away from the
7 hours.
finale of the entire thing, which may be bad timing for you guys listening to a breakdown. But we're gonna save that for next week. Next Tuesday, we're gonna drop an entire Star Wars episode. May the 4th is this weekend. That is Jacob's birthday, as he has said. So happy early birthday to you, Jacob.
Thank you, thank you.
Tales of the Empire drops on May the 4th, and I think that's a full season release, correct?
I do. I think they're doing the exact same thing like they did with Tales of the Jedi, so it should be a full release.
Which is a really good goal with those shorts. It's really nice to kind of just be able to, it's really sad when you get on to watch something. It's 7 minutes of content. You got to wait a week for another one.
Yeah, if that would be miserable. So thank goodness that they're doing these all at one time, because a 7-minute episode and having to wait a week would be literally awful.
Yeah, it would be I just wouldn't watch them until they all came out, honestly.
Exactly. Like, there's just no need to.
Yeah, I know you don't like binging, but that's
like an hour worth of time. So I don't mind binge watching those. Not too bad.
It's not the episode count that bothers you. It's the amount of time invested. But speaking of the Bad Batch, we got our last episode. I am currently on the Bad Batch has taken a bad turn. The Bad Batch is no longer good. The Bad Batch is bad. So
they're not the good batch anymore.
They're not the good batch. It's the Bad Batch. And I'm very disappointed in the show. To have one episode left, I really just don't care. I don't care. And it's sad. It's just like you have wasted every time I've got on, I have left disappointed. The only episode that I wasn't really super disappointed in was the Asajj episode, which is crazy because I think you were disappointed in that episode. But like I was like, okay, like that was pretty good. That was decent. It seems like we're moving the story forward with at least something. And then it didn't go forward at all with that, and we just dropped it. So it's like, I mean, they're gonna have to do some crazy stuff in this finale for me to be like, all right, it's amazing.
Well, listen. So the last episode, I felt the exact same way that you're feeling. All this stuff, it felt like it's just been such a waste of time. It felt like every time the story started to gain even the slightest bit of momentum, something happened and we get sidetracked and we get derailed, and it's just a waste of time. But I will say with the last episode, while it was going on, I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I do like the Bad Batch. I like the idea of the show. I think everything up to this season 3, which is sad to say the final season is the worst season, because season 1 and 2 were fun. They were good. There actually felt like there was a plot and a story going. Season 3 has definitely set the bar a lot lower because it's just not gone anywhere. That being said, I did try to just enjoy the aspect of what we were getting. Tried to put myself back in that frame of mind of like, it's still Star Wars at the end of the day. It's still something I really love. And I did enjoy it a little more and have just more fun with the episode. I thought there were some cool things that happened. But all that being said, everything you said is exactly right. We haven't gotten a really big story. We haven't ever... It felt like the story has been the exact same as season 3, episode 1. It does not feel like we have progressed at all. So look at it as a fact of just trying to have fun with it, and they're just going on these little missions. It's a little more tolerable, which is sad that I've had to even put myself in that frame of mind to enjoy it in the slightest. But it's just one of those things. It's just been such a letdown with everything, how much hype I had for the show. I was so excited for it. Now, I do think there's still an opportunity that the show does something special here with this season finale. I'm really, really banking on this being like an hour and a half long episode so that we get like 3 episodes in one. I think that would be about the only way you could wrap this story up and make it satisfying. Because if it's just another 20-minute episode, we both know it's just going to be a rushed, making no sense, just absolute nonsense the entire time. So that's my one hope for it. But man, overall as a season, it has just been such a disappointment. But I'm gonna keep trying to be hopeful that maybe they can turn it around with one last big episode.
Well, dude, I absolutely love the positive spin that you're able to throw on things. It's absolutely awesome, the delusion that Star Wars has on you. Um, and that's not bad. Like delusion here is actually a good thing. And kind of what I think they're banking on, which is sad. But I thought it was hilarious in this last episode. Literally. Uh and I feel like I said literally like 17 times this podcast, but she is crawling at the end of this episode. She crawled through the vents and got some data on how to escape. And at the end of the previous episode, she crawled through some vents and got some data on how to escape. I'm like, wait, like you literally just did this. Like that was the last episode, right? Like I had to make sure that like I wasn't watching the same episode again.
I don't think the first time she actually got to the point of climbing through the vents. I think she just figured out that she could take the wall down right in that area. That's about I think that's kind of where they got to that. But it's so sad, you're touching on this right now. It's so sad it took a whole next episode for us to get to the point where she does finally crawl through the vents, right? Like we got her to see that she can, but then we had to wait a whole episode to actually see what's through those vents. I mean, this is kind of what I'm talking about, where I had to put on my, people talk about like your drunk goggles and stuff like that. I had to put on my drunk Star Wars goggles for this episode to enjoy it, because if you start thinking about it like that, it'll drive you nuts. So I was just like, throughout this episode, I was just like, oh, that's cool. There's a Zillo Beast. We haven't seen one of those in a little while. I really had to just put myself in that frame of mind, because if not, I would just be immensely more sad than I already am about what this is, because this is one of my favorite. I talked about it right when the season started, how much I loved the Bad Batch and how it was rivaling stuff like Rebels and even season 7 of Clone Wars. I felt like it was getting to that point, and those takes have just been completely flushed down the toilet with what this season 3 has given us, and that's so sad to me, because I thought it had so much momentum. I don't know how they can fix it with one episode left. I keep hearing rumors that Dave Filoni's next animated show is really going to be the next season of the Bad Batch, and that's why they haven't felt a rush to complete this story. But that's just bad storytelling if that is the case. If you're going to have a show, wrap up their story, and you can do whatever you want with the next one. Don't say this is the last season of something just when a new show is going to take its place. I don't like that. So I don't know, but we've talked so much about how much of a disappointment it's been, and I think you've said it, I've said it, it's going to be hard to fix it.
Man, and that's okay. That's okay. Not everything can be perfect, as we've definitely established within the Star Wars universe. We're used to being disappointed.
It's so sad, dude.
But we still have. It's kind of like golf. You can hit 48 terrible shots, and then you just nail one drive, and you're like, dude, I love this sport. I'm back, baby. I'm not leaving. I'm staying.
I feel like that's how we felt with Ahsoka. I think we got Ahsoka, and we were like, we are so back. And now it's just like, no, we aren't.
Yeah, but hey, some exciting things for May the 4th. We got the Tales of the Empire, which I am very excited about. I think they do a really good job with that short story content. I think that's something that they do well, because they aren't tied to any narratives, right? It's more of along the lines of a singular story somewhere along the timeline, but not necessarily tied to anything. So I'm super excited for that. And then also we have some movie recommendations for you guys that maybe you might want to watch. Jacob, what movie recommendation do you have for watching on May the 4th? As this is your birthday, I'm sure you have one that yours go to. Like, do you have a tradition of one that you watch every year on May the 4th?
Usually not. I actually don't usually sit down. It's just such a busy time. I think everyone could say birthdays. It's hard to really just sit down and watch something like that. But I do always make an effort to try to watch something. Episode 3 is obviously my favorite Star Wars movie of all time, so it is always a good choice. But one thing, it might surprise some of you that I'm going to say this. I urge a lot of you guys, if you're listening, go back and watch something like Rogue One or maybe even Solo. I think those movies really don't get enough credit. I really enjoyed those movies. I know you aren't as high on those as I am. I do think you like Rogue One, but you weren't the biggest fan of Solo. I think those are really good movies. I think they're definitely ones that you should go back and watch, especially with the news that his name is slipping my mind right now, but we might be getting more from the Solo actor. And I think he did an absolutely great job showcasing an early Han Solo. Really liked his acting in that movie. I think the story is really fun. Obviously, we're getting the Star Wars Outlaws video game at the end of this year or later in August this year. And I think that's actually going to have a lot of ties to some of the stuff in the Solo movie. Not necessarily that you will have had to watch the movie to understand the game, but there's a lot of stuff with the crime syndicates in this game that it appears to be, and that's heavily what the Solo movie's based on. So if you're interested in stuff like that, I think that's a really good movie to go back and give another chance to. But yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with Episode 3. It's the best Star Wars movie in my opinion, and I think it's one of those you could watch every year and still enjoy it just as much as you did the first time.
Yeah, I'm definitely massively high on Rogue One. Rogue One, I think, is potentially up there with top tier Star Wars.
Yeah, it's good.
I think it's amazing. Some people don't like it, which I found out recently that there are some holdouts who don't really enjoy that movie, which I was surprised to know. More of along the lines of like we didn't need it, more so than it's a bad movie, and think it creates more plot holes than necessarily it fixes. I never had that thought
Me
on it
either.
at all. I
Yeah.
really just enjoyed the movie for what it was and had a blast with it. Solo, I did find a boring a bit. I didn't really enjoy that one. I watched it by myself when I was sick, so that may have been some
Yeah,
of
come
the
on now. You got to
reason.
give it a little better of
You
a
know,
chance.
but I mean, there's movies that I watch when I'm sick that I absolutely love. So I don't think the sick part was like, oh, I'm in a bad mood. So the bad rating on this movie, I just don't think it quite was worth the watch. For especially for the length of it, just seemed a little
It is a
long.
longer movie. Yeah.
It's really hard to watch some of that content, especially like coming off of Andor and some other stuff. Like if you've seen some really good like outside stories in Star Wars, it's really hard to go watch this one because I think it is a little lesser. I don't put it on the same plane as Rogue One at all. I gave it a 6 out of 10, which means meh. I wouldn't watch it again. Yeah.
I think it's definitely deserving of one more watch, and you might still not like it. You might still not, but I can't think of his name right now. But I think he is supposed to be reprising his role in some form or fashion,
Alden,
and whether that's him.
Yeah, Alden Ehrenreich.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Gibberish. But
I was like, I wanted to say it when you said his name, but I was like, I know it's Alden, but I don't know. I have no clue how to say his last name at all.
So I think he is supposed to be reprising his role in some form or fashion, and I really did think he did a good job. So, like I said, I urge people. I always say if you'd have a movie that you want to watch, a Star Wars movie, whether you've seen them or not, I think those two movies are always great to go back to because you may have seen them, but you probably don't remember them all that well because they are kind of random. They really don't make the story any. I hesitate with Rogue One because I do feel like it makes the story of Star Wars better. But it's not something that you have to have watched to understand Star Wars. It really is such an isolated story. So that's why I usually recommend those two, because I think they're really good, and I don't ever think they get the credit they deserve. So,
okay. Well, that was not what I was expecting you to say for watch, but hey,
there's a little
there's
wild
always,
one for you.
Hey, there's always a little wild person in Jacob running around with Star Wars. You never know what he's quite going to say. Like
no, you don't.
Captain Rex
I usually don't
his
know what
favorite character in all of Star Wars. So that's super interesting. I would recommend personally just to watch the fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. That's kind of what I would say. I think I try to watch that every May 4th. Just kind of watch that on YouTube, the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan. I think that's awesome. And it's just the best it's just the best lightsaber battle in all of Star Wars. It's the epitome of my childhood there. So I do try to watch that every May 4th. So
Well, it's one of those fights that I don't know that it'll just in cinema period. I don't know that it'll ever be topped. It is so good. Like the choreography is it's unmatched. The height of what is happening in a world, it doesn't get any higher stakes than that moment. It's just perfect. So yeah, that's a great recommendation. If you don't have time to watch a whole movie, you definitely at least give yourself probably don't even take 10 whole minutes to watch that fight. It's awesome.
and so moving on from that, I do have three questions for you, Jacob. The first one is, are there any movies coming out or out currently that you are wanting to watch? At like going to go to the movie theater to watch.
Going to the movies, I don't believe so. That's out currently. There's really not a whole lot, and I don't go to the movies a lot unless it's like the big movies. That's usually about the only time I get the chance to go, and I really make sure to set aside time is when it's actually a big movie. Um, so right now I don't feel like there's anything huge. Probably honestly, the next movie I'm going to be seeing in the theaters is probably just going to be Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't see anything else. Um, catching me in a way that I feel like I need to go to the movies for. And then just talking about just movies in general. Um, funny movie I kind of want to see is the newest Kung Fu Panda. I might sit down and watch that one because I think those movies are great. It's something I haven't got to sit down and watch yet. My wife loves Kung Fu Panda, so we'll probably watch that together at some point. But yeah, there's not really anything big that I'm super interested in right now.
Okay. There's three movies out right now that I really want to watch. And kind of in order, it goes The Fall Guy that releases this weekend with Ryan Gosling.
Hmm.
Um, and that one just looks like such a fun time at the theater. It's right up my alley. I love chick flicks. I don't understand why. I just do. It's got Ryan Gosling in it. How can you go wrong? Emily Blunt and then Aaron Taylor Johnson. So a really fun cast, and it's getting pretty good reviews, especially from I follow some critics that have very similar taste to me, and they all say it's just absolute blast. And I know this is one that my wife would also really enjoy to watch, so I'm really excited to watch that. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare also looks like a good
Hmm.
time at the theater. One that's more probably theater worthy than Fall Guys, or the Fall Guy. Um, and I've heard that Alan Richardson and Henry Cavill just absolutely kill their performances, and that it's also a really good time. And then the last one that I want to watch is Civil War. So Civil War seems it's the newest A24 film, which is one of the best I guess production companies out right now. They just produce really high quality films that are a little bit off the beaten path. And they say this one's really good. It's very thought provoking. It doesn't hold your hand. It's a hard watch. It's not pretty. It's not always fun. But they say it's really good. And in an election year with some tensions that we have, they say it's really good release timing. Um, so I really want to see that one, but I don't know which one to watch. So I'm planning on trying to get to the theater sometime in the next 2 weeks to watch one of these films. And if any of you guys out there have one that you would like me to watch to kind of give a review of, go ahead and hit us up on the Instagram, the Twitter, or in our private Instagrams and Twitters. Any of those is fine. And just let us know, like, hey, yeah, like I've actually wanted to go see this, but I haven't got to. I don't know if it's worth my time. Maybe go check it out and give us your opinions to see if you like it, so that it's worth our money. So that would be also super fun, and we'll try to get out to the theaters to watch whatever you guys recommend. So with that, that's one of my questions. Now we have a weekly fun question that we're gonna kind of drop this week to kind of see what we're doing. Jacob, I sent you a screenshot of a tweet, and I was just curious. I thought it was a super interesting question. They had a rows of superhero movies, and they said, "What is the best? What is the best comic book movie origin in each row?" And so the first row, we had some clear duds. Like Ant-Man was up there, which is a really fun movie, but not on lines with the next two I'm going to say. But it's had Iron Man and Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, between those two films, which one would you be picking for top superhero origin movie?
Man, I think I'm gonna go Ant-Man on this one. It's just I'm just kidding, but like you said, Ant-Man is a good movie, but it's not even close to on par with Guardians of the Galaxy and Iron Man in terms of origin movies. But I thought about this question not for very long actually after you sent it. It was a pretty quick answer for me. And for me, it's Iron Man. I absolutely love the first Iron Man movie, and I think one of the things that I tried to explain this in a text, but sometimes it can be hard to like really explain it in a text as to why I picked Iron Man. But Guardians of the Galaxy had some movies that had come before it that, the directors and stuff were able to build off of, and they knew, you know, we should do this, we shouldn't do that. Iron Man was the first, and it really was the one that kicked off the entire MCU, obviously. So that's why I think that movie is so special to me, because it was so good without having any feedback or anything like that. They just hit the nail right on the head, right out of the gates. I think everything about that movie is so fun. It's just such a good movie. Iron Man's one of my favorite superheroes, so it was kind of a no-brainer for me, and there's probably a lot of bias towards that just because of how much I do like Iron Man. So I'm sure you're going to have a good different take on this because I know you're such a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan. But just for some of those few reasons right there, that was really one of the big things that really led me to just picking Iron Man right off the bat.
Yeah. And so this is actually tougher for me, and kind of had to go back through my watch because of all of those reasons you just said. Iron Man holds a very special place in my heart. Um and it's still an absolutely amazing film. I think if it would have failed, we would not have the masterpiece of the MCU that we currently have. And
No,
I
no
do
way.
I mean it's my favorite form of entertainment is the MCU. So I absolutely love that. Um, and so this is like really tough for me. However, my senior year of college, Chelsea had not been to many MCU films with me. I don't think she had. We actually hadn't gone to the theater to watch an MCU film yet. And we were flying from Pensacola to North Carolina for a job interview, and we got stuck in Atlanta because of tornadoes, and our flight got delayed 6 hours and ultimately got canceled. So we had to try to find a hotel during in Atlanta, and it was just a mess. Like college kids don't have any money, and it was like it was kind of crazy. Um, but during that time, we watched Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was the first time she had ever seen it. Um, and that she loved that movie so much that she actually gave all of the other MCU films a shot. She hadn't watched any of them with me, but after that, she actually like I gave her a hard drive with like all of the movies on it because I had them all. And she like, okay, like I'm gonna watch through it, and so she watched up and caught up, and then we've watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 after that. So Guardians of the Galaxy is not only the movie I think is just absolute awesome. I have it as my fourth favorite MCU film, period. But also because of it sparked Chelsea's love for the MCU. I'm gonna go with Guardians of the Galaxy. Um, I actually think that it did some original things, an original thought that didn't build off of Iron Man. I don't think it really stood on Iron Man's back at all. I think it did something completely unique and different and gave the MCU those long lasting legs that it needed. Because I know a common take on Twitter going on in the last few days is that phases 1 and 2 weren't really good. That they were not the best phases of MCU, which it's not. Phase 3 was the best by far, but without Guardians of the Galaxy picking up some of that slack from, Captain America, the first Avenger, it's not the best film. Thor, the first Thor, Thor the Dark World. Like
Hmm.
we definitely had some duds. But I think Guardians of the Galaxy and the success of knockoff characters who weren't mainstream, who no one really knew about, really allowed the continuation of the MCU more so than anything else, because even Iron Man 2, people were disappointed with that film. Um Chef is an amazing movie to watch, directed by Jon Favreau, who it's an allegory of his creation of um, Iron Man 1 and 2. And it's really shows the frustration behind the scenes that he had to deal with to create Iron Man 2. Um, and so there was definitely some tensions. There were some people who weren't super satisfied with what the MCU was putting out. Avengers really tied it together, and then Guardians of the Galaxy gave it legs to run. Is kind of how I view that. And so I'm going to go with Guardians of the Galaxy over Iron Man 1 just because of the love for Chelsea, the like starting Chelsea's love of the MCU, giving the MCU legs, and then just the overall. If I had to choose one to watch, I'm going to choose Guardians of the Galaxy every time.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think there's really a wrong choice here because they are both so good. Now I'm of the frame like if I have one to watch, I always pick Iron Man. I love going back to that first Iron Man. It's just so fun. It's so good to me. But I do think a lot of that is just so how much more I like Iron Man as a character. And that's not to say I don't love the Guardians. I think they're all great. But I know I definitely don't enjoy them as much as you do. So I think that's probably a big reason why I pick Iron Man. I just love that movie. It's such, and I think I put a lot of weight into the fact, like you said, without it, we definitely wouldn't have what we have today. But I do like the little spin you put on it with Guardians kind of being a big, much needed win at the time that it came. Because you made a lot of valid points. Thor wasn't the best. The first Thor movie is not the best. They did have some duds, like you said. So having Guardians be as successful as it was and as beloved as it has become, especially today's day and age, people love it. It definitely is one of the things that propelled the MCU forward rather than held it in place or even held it back.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that the MCU wouldn't have succeeded without that. I don't think that's close at all. I think it just gave it all of its legs to ball into what became today. Because I mean, I know that Captain America: Winter Soldier and then Age of Ultron were also really big wins that came out, close in proximity to that movie. But I think with 3 consecutive wins back to back to back, and then Ant-Man came out, which was also a big win, Civil War, and then Doctor Strange, like it just was like that little stretch right there. Had one of those movies not been as good as it was, like could have derailed the thing. But man, Marvel really just started picking up like win after win after win in that Guardians era that
Yeah.
really just propelled it to snowball into the cinematic universe that allowed it to be where it's at today. So Guardians of the Galaxy for me. Let us know what y'all's opinions are on this. Is Guardians of the Galaxy better than Iron Man? I think so, but Jacob does not agree. Iron Man, and it's definitely something that maybe tomorrow I have a different opinion on because I do love Iron Man. However, in my ranking of the MCU, which we may go through someday on this podcast, it's not necessarily close. I actually have every single Guardians of the Galaxy movie above Iron Man.
Yeah, and it's hard to even say. Like, it is a tough question. I think that's what makes it so fun. Because if we're talking about straight up movies, it might be a better movie. I just feel like the weight of what Iron Man had on its shoulders of, like you said, if it fails, we don't get what we get today. I think that just means so much. But that's why I like the question so much, because there's so many ways you can spin it. There's so many things you can put onto it. But like Zane said, reach out to us for sure. I'm going to try to get a poll running over on the Instagram. So if you guys are interested in going over there to vote, that'd be great. So you guys can get a little more interaction and we can kind of see what you guys think rather than just hearing ourselves talk the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. We love that fan interaction because one of the best things about these movies is there is a community, and that's part of the fun. So, but with that, we got a little shorter episode with you this week for you guys. We got a fun Star Wars episode next week, and we will absolutely bring it for that. Excited to break down the entire Bad Batch. Trust me, I'm not gonna just negative Nancy the whole time. We're gonna bring some joy to Star Wars episode for sure. Tales of the Empire is definitely going to be a win. You're marking, I'm putting my stamp of approval on it already. Just kidding. I would never do that with a Star Wars show. You never know what you're gonna get, but I really do expect that to be good. But join us next week for that. And then also connect with us on those social medias. Give us a follow. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, hit that subscribe button. It's free. It's easy to do. And then you may or may not. I don't know if it always works, but you get notifications of when we drop. It should be always on Tuesdays, but like I said, some things in life are going to throw some curveballs at you. And especially with this not being our main gig, we may not be as consistent as we wish we could be. So, but with that, that's going to be our show for the week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and hopefully we'll catch you in the next one.